Picture a Sunday morning in 1965. The smell of two-stroke oil drifting across a terrace street, a father polishing his pride and joy on the driveway, kids watching from the doorstep in their Sunday best. Britain was falling in love with the motorcar, and these 10 machines were the ones ordinary families actually chose. One entry on this list sold more than anything else. And it probably isn't what you think. This is exactly the kind of story Britain Rewind exists to tell, so if you're new here, subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss one. Now, let's start with the car that told Britain exactly where it was heading. Number 10. The Ford Corsair. The Corsair was the car you bought when the Cortina felt just a little too ordinary, and that ambition told you everything about Britain's growing aspiration in the 1960s. As wages crept upward and hire purchase became easier to access, families began dreaming of something with a touch more style. The Corsair answered that call with its bold, wedge-shaped nose, a genuinely striking silhouette on roads still populated by drab post-war saloons. Beneath that dramatic styling, it shared much of its mechanical underpinning with the Cortina, which kept costs manageable and reliability reasonable. Over 310,000 Corsairs were sold during its production run, modest by Ford's own standards, but deeply telling about where British taste was heading. Your grandfather might have saved up an extra £50 over the Cortina just to pull up to the golf club in something that looked like it meant business. The Corsair said, "I have standards." But the car that outsold it managed to do something far cleverer. It made ordinary feel extraordinary. Number 9. The BMC Farina. Long before brand identities fractured into a dozen submarques, BMC had a masterstroke: take one elegant Italian body and sell it under 5 different badges to 5 different kinds of buyer. The BMC Farina range, penned by the legendary Pininfarina studio in Turin, appeared as the Austin Cambridge, the Morris Oxford, the Wolseley 15/60ths, the Riley 4/68ths, and the Milligram Magnet, all essentially the same car in different clothing. Factory worker or bank manager, BMC had a Farina with your name on it. A 1961 facelift sharpened its lines and sales genuinely surged, placing it inside the UK's top 10 sellers for much of the decade. There were over 600,000 built across all variants. Millions of British families remember the Wolseley version parked outside a relative's house, that distinctive illuminated badge on the bonnet glowing in the winter dark like a little beacon of respectability. But the car that comes next proved you didn't need Italian styling to capture Britain's heart. Number 8. The Triumph Herald. Here is a fact that genuinely stops people. The Triumph Herald had a turning circle tighter than a London taxi. 14 feet, curb to curb, and in the narrow streets of 1960s Britain, that was not a trivial advantage. Standard Triumph designed this small, sharp-cornered saloon when the company was fighting for its life, and they created something genuinely clever: a separate chassis that made the Herald easy and cheap to repair, with bolt-on body panels that could be replaced individually. For the young family squeezing into a terrace street or navigating a cramped market town, the Herald felt almost impossibly nimble. The convertible version, wind in your hair on the A-road to Clecton, was a rare slice of affordable glamour. Over 530,000 Heralds found buyers before production ended. Your grandmother probably learned to drive in one, bumping nervously around a car park somewhere in the Midlands. But what comes next outsold the Herald by a country mile, and it did so wearing a very familiar badge. Number 7. The Vauxhall Victor. Let's be honest, the Victor was never the most glamorous car in the road. But glamour wasn't what the working-class family of 1963 was shopping for. The original FA Victor of 1957 had borrowed its styling shamelessly from American Chevrolets: tall fins, chrome flourishes, and it rusted almost before you'd driven it off the forecourt. The FB Victor of 1961 fixed all that. Cleaner lines, improved body sealing, and a genuine sense of grown-up solidity made it a quietly dependable choice. It appeared consistently in Britain's top 6 bestsellers from 1961 through 1967, peaking at over 60,000 registrations in a single year. Think of the Victor as the car parked outside every third semi-detached on every road in every industrial town: Coventry, Luton, Wolverhampton. The smell of vinyl seats on a hot August afternoon, windows wound down, the family heading to the seaside. Nobody romanticized the Victor at the time. And yet it sold, year after year, in extraordinary numbers. Stay with us, number 1 is going to genuinely surprise you, and we're not done yet. Number 6, the Hillman Imp. A rear-engine small car built in Scotland. On paper, that sounds like a recipe for catastrophe, and in some ways, it was. But what a fascinating, lovable catastrophe. The Hillman Imp was Rootes Group's direct answer to the Mini, developed at enormous cost and launched from a brand new factory in Linwood, near Glasgow, a government-encouraged location that added crippling logistical complexity to production from day one. The 875 cubic centimeters aluminium engine was derived from a Coventry Climax racing unit, which made it rev freely and feel genuinely spirited. Early reliability troubles overshadowed its very real engineering cleverness, and yet nearly 440,000 Imps were built over 13 years. This was the car that working families in central Scotland called their own, a genuinely local car for a people who'd been told industry was coming to them. The Sunbeam Stiletto variant, in particular, turned heads on every high street. The Imp never quite shook off its troubled reputation. But the car that follows never had a reputation to shake, because everyone already loved it. Number 5, the Vauxhall Viva. Strip away the nostalgia for a moment, and you're left with the bare, important truth. The Vauxhall Viva was the car that finally gave a generation of motorcycle and sidecar families their first proper car. The original HA Viva of 1963 was almost deliberately plain, boxy, upright, no frills whatsoever. But it was affordable, priced to compete directly with the Mini, and it worked. The 1966 HB Viva was a revelation by comparison, arriving with flowing Coke bottle curves that doubled sales almost overnight. In 1967, it was the third best-selling car in Britain with over 100,000 registrations. Picture the foreman at the Luton plant, ironic, since that's where Vauxhalls were built, driving home in the very car he'd helped assemble, the radio crackling with Radio Caroline. The Viva was deeply, stubbornly unglamorous, and that was precisely its power. It met people exactly where they were. But what sits at number 4 was built by a company that understood something deeper still, that a car could reshape an entire class structure. This is the moment, we're closing in on number 1, and trust us, the story behind it is unlike anything else on this list. Number 4, the Ford Anglia and Ford Escort. Two names. One relentless philosophy, give Britain exactly what Britain needs, and price it so nobody can say no. The Ford Anglia 105e arrived in 1959 with its cheeky reverse rake rear window, a style touch that felt almost American, almost futuristic, almost daring on roads still haunted by the grey utility of the post-war years. By the mid-60s it was one of the most recognizable cars in the country, with over 1 million examples built by the time it was replaced. Then came the Escort in 1968, cleaner, sharper, and smarter, launched with a motorsport pedigree baked in from the very start. In 1968 alone, its first year on sale, nearly 98,000 Escorts were registered. Together these two models represent an unbroken thread of Ford family motoring that ran through almost every street in Britain. Your uncle probably souped up an Anglia. Your older cousin almost certainly learned to drive in an Escort. Ford knew the British family better than the British family knew itself. And yet there were still 3 cars that outsold even these. Number 3, the Mini. Forget the sales figures for a moment. The Mini didn't just sell, it changed the way Britain thought about itself. Alec Isigonis conceived it during the Suez Crisis, when petrol prices spiked and panic swept the forecourts. His answer was almost insultingly brilliant, a 10-foot box that put 80% of its footprint to human use, with a transverse engine, front-wheel drive, and rubber cone suspension that made it handle better than anything in its class. It launched in 1959 for £496 and within 3 years it was outselling everything in Europe except the VW Beetle. During the 1960s, it averaged over 90,000 UK registrations per year. But here is what the numbers don't tell you, the Mini was the first truly classless British car. Dustmen drove Minis, so did the Queen. Pop stars, racing drivers, art students, all in the same 10-foot machine, winding through the same streets. Your parents almost certainly remember the sound of a Mini engine, that distinctive, high-pitched mechanical clatter, disappearing around the corner on a rainy morning. Number 1 is almost here, and when we get there, you'll understand why no other car on this list could possibly have taken that spot. Number 2, the Ford Cortina Mk1 and Mk2. The Ford Cortina was, without question, the most strategically brilliant car ever launched in Britain. That is not hyperbole. When Ford launched the Mk1 in 1962, they did something nobody had done before. They offered a full-sized family saloon. For doors, a proper boot. Room for the school run and the holiday luggage, at a price that undercut everything comparable. The 4-door Cortina Deluxe was £687. The equivalent 1100 Deluxe was £695. £8. That's what stood between Ford and dominance. The Mk2 of 1966 brought more space, better engines, 1,300 cubic centimeters and 1,500 cubic centimeters, and a level of polish that turned buyers away from BMC in their tens of thousands. In 1967, the Cortina Mk2 took the number 1 spot in Britain for the entire year with over 165,000 registrations. The 1600E variant, wooden dashboard, sporty alloys, gave the salesman class and the ambitious young professional something to aspire to. There's a smell that lingers from a 1960s Cortina, warm vinyl, cigarette smoke from the driver's seat, the faint tang of engine oil on a Monday morning commute. Almost every family in Britain has one in their story somewhere. But there was one car that outsold even the Cortina, year after year, for most of the decade. And the reason why is the most human story on this entire list. Number 1, the BMC 1100-1300. The best-selling car in Britain for 6 out of 7 years between 1964 and 1971. That is an achievement that no single model has matched before or since across such a sustained stretch of a decade. But raw dominance is not why the BMC 1100-1300 sits at number 1. It sits here because of what it represented, and who it was built for. Alec Isigonis applied the same transverse front-wheel drive genius he had given the Mini to a slightly larger, more practical, more genuinely livable car. The result was something that felt almost miraculous for its price, a compact 12-foot saloon that rode with extraordinary smoothness thanks to its interconnected hydroelastic suspension, the front and rear wheels communicating through fluid, absorbing the lumps and ruts of Britain's still patchy road network with quiet dignity. In 1965 alone, over 157,000 were registered. At its 1966 peak, the 1100 accounted for 14.5% of every new car sold in the UK. One car. 1 in 7. It came in every flavour the BMC badge family could offer: the Austin 1100, the Morris 1100, the Milligram 1100, the Riley Kestrel, the Wolseley 1100, and the breathtaking Vanden Plas Princess 1100, a car with a hand-stitched leather interior and a walnut dashboard that somehow, impossibly, cost little more than a basic Cortina. Britain had never had a car that offered so much for so little. Millions of British families remember the 1100 not as a number on a sales chart, but as the car that made the family holiday possible. The car that smelled of wet dogs and fish and chips and damp coats after a day at Whitby. The car your nan sat in, crocheting in the passenger seat while your grandfather navigated by memory down the A1. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't powerful. It was simply, profoundly, the right car at the right moment, and Britain knew it, because Britain bought it in numbers that have never been matched. The BMC 1100-1300 is not just the best-selling British family car of the 1960s. It is a portrait of an entire generation. These weren't just machines, they were the furniture of everyday British life, carrying the routines, the hopes, and the Sunday afternoons of a generation finding its feet in a changing world. Every driveway tells a story. Which of these cars did your family own? Tell us in the comments below. We would love to hear your stories. Until next time.